Robert Bud Dwyer. Robert Bud Dwyer was an American politician who served as a state treasurer for Pennsylvania between 1981 and 1987. In 1986, Dwyer was convicted on 11 charges of conspiracy, mail fraud, and perjury. The case against Dwyer was built because he was accused of giving a multi-million-dollar contract to a computer company, Computer Technology Associates, for their services in exchange of a bribe. The court and the Department of Justice built the case against him, smeared his name, and tarnished his reputation. However, throughout the entire case, Dwyer maintained his innocence. Despite that, he was convicted and scheduled to be sentenced to 55 years on the 23rd of January, 1987. Just one day before he was scheduled to be put behind bars, Dwyer held a press conference where he talked about how the U.S. attorney, the judge, and the FBI had carried out injustice. What nobody knew was that this press conference would end up being the most horrifying public speech of all time. During the 30 minutes of his speech, Dwyer read from a 21-page document, while the reporters were given just 20 pages. Everyone assumed that the last page would have his official resignation statement. Midway through the speech, Dwyer stopped and called 3 of his staff men, giving them each a sealed envelope. The first letter was addressed to Bob Casey, the governor of Pennsylvania at the time, the second to Gregory Penney, the deputy press secretary, and the last to Deputy Treasurer Don Johnson. Gregory Penney's envelope included an organ donor card, while the last envelope to Don Johnson had 3 letters, one for Dwyer's wife and the remaining 2 for his 2 children. After he had handed out the envelopes, Dwyer pulled out a brown envelope that had a .357 Magnum revolver in it. He pulled out the gun and asked the people to leave the room if it would affect them. Everyone in the room quickly understood Dwyer's intentions of self-harm and asked him to seize the weapon. However, Dwyer's mind was already made up. In the next few seconds, he put the barrel in his mouth and pulled the trigger, taking his life on the spot. The entire tragic event was recorded and shown live on TV, making it one of the most disturbing and traumatizing events in TV history. Public of al-Sadiq Hamid al-Shuwaidi. Born in Benghazi, Libya, al-Sadiq came to the U.S. to study aeronautical engineering. During his time in the U.S., he gained a deep understanding of civil rights, liberties, and democratic ideals. After completing his studies in aeronautical engineering, he returned to Libya in the early 1980s and secured a job at an airport. He then joined a group of friends who were campaigning against the regime of Muammar Gaddafi, the leader of Libya at the time. Campaigning against Gaddafi was considered equivalent to being a traitor, and when the Libyan authorities finally caught up with him, he was put on a public trial. The trial took place in a basketball stadium in Benghazi, where thousands of high school and university students witnessed him in the middle of the stadium. Al-Shuwaidi's hands were tied behind his back, and he sat on his knees alone in the middle of the stadium. The accusation against him was that he was plotting to assassinate Gaddafi, and the court described him as a terrorist from the Muslim Brotherhood and an agent of America. Despite 2 young men going to the judges to appeal for mercy, the judges ordered his execution, and a gallows was produced in the middle of the basketball court. Soon afterward, he was publicly in front of thousands of witnesses, and the execution was also broadcast live on Libyan television. Al-Shuwaidi kicked and writhed while being hung, and to stop him, Huda Ben Amer, a young woman who was a Gaddafi loyalist, came to the court, grabbed his legs, and pulled his body down until he gave up. After this act, Huda Ben Amer was seen as a strong woman who supported Gaddafi's regime, and to award her, she was given multiple government positions. She became known as one of the richest and most powerful women in Libya. Jack Ruby kills Lee Harvey Oswald. On the 22nd of November 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, marking one of the most horrifying moments recorded in TV history. However, just a day later, on the 23rd of November 1963, the authorities arrested Lee Harvey Oswald, a U.S. Marine veteran and the assassin of John F. Kennedy. The next day, on the 24th of November 1963, police officers were escorting Oswald through the basement of the Dallas Police Headquarters to the county jail. Reporters, cameramen, and a lot of spectators surrounded the area to see the murderer of the president. As Oswald stepped out of the basement, Jack Ruby, one of the spectators, immediately stepped forward with a gun in his hand. He shot Oswald in the abdomen, dropping him on the ground. The firing took place at 11:21 a.m., and Oswald was pronounced dead at 1:07 p.m. at the Parkland Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where John F. Kennedy was pronounced dead just 2 days earlier. The shooting was broadcast on live TV with hundreds of thousands of people watching Jack Ruby, a nightclub owner, taking matters into his own hands after being distraught over Kennedy's death. Christine Chubbuck. On the morning of the 15th of July, 1974, during a routine news bulletin broadcast, Christine Chubbuck, a news reporter for Channel 40 in Sarasota, Florida, did something that shocked the entire world. Christine was just 29 years old, and according to her coworkers, she was a virgin, and she had her ovary removed surgically recently. The doctors told her that if she didn't have a baby within 3 years, the chances of her getting pregnant ever again would be significantly lowered. The reason behind these dramatic steps was that Christine suffered from severe depression since she could never get into the dating game. According to her brother, she had a boyfriend when she was 21, but since the boyfriend was 30 years old, her father never approved of the relationship. Since then, she never dated anybody else. Her mother said that Christine had been seeing a psychiatrist for several weeks to fight depression, and that she had tried to take her own life back in 1970 by overdosing on pills, but unfortunately, the therapy never worked for her. A week before the unfortunate day, Chubbuck joked with her co-worker and news editor Rob Smith about bringing a gun on air and shooting herself. At the time, Rob Smith changed the topic because it seemed like a sick joke. A few days later, she also hosted a party, calling all of her co-workers to attend. They reported that Chubbuck was seen having a lot of fun, and they were shocked to see an entirely different fun side of her at the party. What they didn't know was that this party was just her way of saying goodbye to everyone she knew. On the 15th of January, 1974, Chubbuck covered 3 national news stories and a horrifying shooting that happened on the 14th of January, 1974 at a local restaurant in the Sarasota-Bradenton airport. The video of the restaurant shooting jammed, and Chubbuck shrugged it off and went on to say the most horrifying words ever recorded in TV history. She said, "In keeping with the WXLT practice of presenting the most immediate and complete reports of local blood and guts news, TV 40 presents what is believed to be a television first, in living color, an exclusive coverage of an attempted." Immediately afterward, she drew a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver and unloaded it behind her right ear. According to reports, she fell forward violently, and the broadcast instantly faded to a black screen. The station then ran a public service announcement and started to show a movie. Later, news director Mike Simmons found the papers on Chubbuck's desk from which she had been reading the newscast. She had a complete script of her program, along with the shooting and a third-person account to be read by the staff member who took her position in the show after the incident. According to Mike Simmons, her script called for her condition to be listed as critical. Christine was taken to the Sarasota Memorial Hospital, where she lost her life 14 hours later. Christine Chubbuck's horrifying death was the first ever recorded suicide in live TV history. The footage has not been seen since its initial airing, and while there have been numerous theories about what happened to the footage, nobody knew if it even existed until 2016. In June 2016, it was confirmed that the footage existed and had been in the possession of station owner Robert Nelson. His wife, Molly, handed the footage to a large law firm for safekeeping, and she said that she had no plans to make it publicly available. If you liked this video, subscribe for similar ones or join my Discord to suggest another.